Good morning. I'm Rosalie Schaefer, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I welcome you to our program today. Our program today will be elections and campaigning. These are some things that we will be involved in very much this coming year. In fact, by the end of the year, we'll probably pretty much sick of it. However, this is so important. It's probably one of the most important things you can do this year is to vote and become involved. What's it like to run for public office? How does a newcomer get started? What are the rules? How do you organize a campaign and get your message out? And how can citizens help someone who is running? We have today a panel of experts who will talk to us, educate us about these issues. We have Bob Sweat, the Manatee County Supervisor of Elections, and he's going to cover the rules. And April Schiff, who is President of Strategic Solutions, an independent political consulting firm from Tampa. And she can tell us all about strategies and how best to organize a campaign and how to get your message out. And we have Carol Whitmore, Manatee County Commissioner, and she's going to give us some real-life experiences as a candidate and an office holder. Okay, we can get started with County Supervisor of Elections, Bob Sweat.
I picked up real quick on the experts that she had here today. I'm far from being an expert, but I hope that as we get into this, that I can share a few ideas with you that might make it easier if you are thinking about running for office, or if you've already made up your mind to run for an elected office. It might help you just a little bit. I could probably spend a couple of hours, which we don't have here, on campaigning and the election laws and election codes here in the state of Florida in Manatee County, but I'm going to try to summarize this very briefly, maybe give you some food for thought and pique your interest enough that you can seek your answers after this is over, either by coming by my office or picking up a packet, something like that. Let me tell you, one of the first things I'd like to point out to you if you're thinking about running for office, there is no greater honor than being elected to an office here in Manatee County or on the state level by the voters in your area. I've served for this is my 28th year, and I can't begin to tell you every day the pride that I feel is not so much the job that we do, but the fact that the voters here in Manatee County has put their trust in me to do the job. And it's a great feeling to know that you've gone out, campaigned, and asked the voters to vote for you, and they have. Let me start, and I don't want to take April's thunder, but one of the things that I felt like I needed to mention this morning, if you're thinking about running for office, I think there's two things that you need to have. Number one, you need to have the time to test the waters. You need to talk to your friends, your neighbors, and then go out and talk to the people that aren't your friends, because sometimes your friends will tell you things that aren't true. They're not going to tell you that you're no good or that you can't do the job, but strangers will. And so you need to talk to both of them. And the second thing that you need to have is you really need to have a fire in your belly to do the job. Elected jobs are not a piece of cake, and they're not easy. It takes time, and you need to have the dedication and the determination to go out here and make sure that you are the very best of the best, because that's what the people are voting for when they elect you to serve in a public office. Now, there's a lot of things in elections, in the elections office, that you need to know before you get ready to run. Once you've made up your mind and you're mentally ready to go out and challenge the people to vote for you, you need to know that you have to open up a campaign account and appoint a campaign treasurer. You cannot do anything except talk until that point. Once you do that, you can start collecting money and you can start spending money on your campaign. Because if you spend any money at all on your campaign, it has got to be in a campaign account. You have got to have collected that money, either from yourself or from your neighbors or from your friends, or maybe total strangers that would want to help you out along the way. I will tell you now, it is not cheap to run for office. I go back and look at some of the campaign reports in my office over, excuse me, over the years, and I can remember the first time that I ran, I had $8,000 in the bank to run for this office. The last time I ran, I had almost $80,000 in the bank to run for the office. And if you'll look at some of the reports over the last 2 to 4 years, you will see that county commissioners, sheriff candidates, property appraiser, tax collector on a local level, I'm talking about, these people will have 60, 70, 80, 90,000, 100,000, 120,000. I mean, it's up and up and up, because campaigning is not cheap. If you've bought an ad in the newspaper recently, even if it's only just a small ad, you know that it costs megabucks to put those in there. Your mailers cost money to mail out to people asking them to vote for you. So if you're planning on running, you better decide that you sit down and make you up a budget so that you know approximately what you think you're going to be spending in the upcoming election. You need to appoint a campaign treasurer, and we have all the forms at our office, and I'm not going to tell you the numbers because you would forget them before you got to the office, but each form is numbered. We have forms for the campaign treasurer and for your campaign account. You need to come to our office, pick up these forms, fill them out to a point, and then take them to your depository. That's a bank or a credit union, someplace that holds money that you can write a check off of and you get it there. So you need to get all of this done, bring it back to our office, and we will fill out the rest of the paperwork for you, and then you're ready to start collecting money and start spending money. Now, let me emphasize to you that if you collect 1 penny, it has to go on your report. And if you spend 1 penny, it has to go on your report. All of this is synchronized so that the press, other candidates, and the general public can look at these reports and say how much money you have collected, how much money you have spent, and how you spent it. It's important for the people to know that, because people come in our office all the time and look at those reports. Or either they go online to our website and they look at them, because you can go online and find out exactly how much money a person has collected and how much they haven't. Now, appointing a campaign treasurer is really easy. You can get your neighbor, you can get a CPA, or you can be your own campaign treasurer. It doesn't, your wife or your husband can be your campaign treasurer. So it doesn't matter who, but you've got to have somebody on there that is responsible and that we can contact in case we have a problem with your report. And trust me, we have problems with candidates' reports. No matter how much we go over them, we always find that they either collected the money, didn't get it in the bank in that 5-day grace period that they have to do it, or either they've spent some money for something that they shouldn't have spent it for. So it's important to have a campaign treasurer so that we can contact them before these reports are put online. You really don't want to put these reports online and let the public look at it and see how stupid you are. Believe me, I know it really sounds silly, but we make these dumb little mistakes. We, meaning all of us, make them when it comes to the campaign, because when it gets in full swing, you need a campaign treasurer that's going to handle your money. You can't be just writing a check out or running over here, taking money out of your pocket and buying something. You need somebody that's going to really take care of that. I want to cover a couple of things that I think is kind of important that you need to know about when you come in. The filing officer, and you'll hear people talk about this, there's 2 filing officers, one for local candidates like my office, we're the local filing officer, or the state is the other filing officer, and therefore multi-county and state races on there. Now, if you are going to run for a state office, I think it's very important, and I tell everybody that comes in and talks to me about this, if you're going to mail, and you can send your stuff up to Tallahassee, you don't have to take all of your qualifying papers up to Tallahassee, but it's really important, if you send them up there, you get a return receipt requested, because God only knows what happens. In fact, I'll share this with you. 4 years ago, somebody sent theirs up, just put it in the overnight. The plane crashed when it was landing in Tallahassee and burned, and all of the papers on that plane burned up, and they had no proof that they had their paperwork on the airplane. If they'd had a receipt return requested on that, they could have gone up and said, you need to allow me to go ahead and fill out the paperwork again and get it up here to you. So that's one of the things that you need to look at is whether you're qualifying in Tallahassee. If you qualify locally, we're going to help you. We're going to walk you through it as you get in there to it. Another thing is your contributions. You can't collect more than $500 per election. Per election means first primary or the general if you've got opposition in both of them. $500 is the max that you can collect. $50 if you collect over $50, you have to put down the occupation and the name of the person that gave you the money. So it's important that you keep track. You can't. One of the things that people ask me every election is, we're going to have a tea party and we're going to put a jug on the table and ask everybody to leave a contribution. Well, that is a no-no, because you're going to end up giving that money to charity, because there's no place for it to go unless you've got a name with a person that's stuffed $5 or $10 in the fishbowl up on the table there. So be careful when you get to that. Now, there's another type of contribution, and I think all of us use this. It's called an in-kind contribution. It's anything that's not money, okay? Like, for instance, I have all of my 2x4s left over from the last election, and I like you, and so I'm going to give them to you to use. You can't just take those without showing it. So, as an in-kind contribution, I've given you something of value, but it's not money, okay? You've got to list that, and the person that claims the amount of value to that in-kind contribution is the person that's giving it to you, not you. For instance, if you have a good friend that owns a car dealership and they're going to loan you a pickup truck to go put up your signs with, they have got to declare that as a contribution called an in-kind contribution, and you have to list it. So if the dealer says, oh, well, it's only worth $20, and you had it for 4 days, you've got to put down there that this truck is from who it was from, and this is the in-kind contribution that you list on your account for that. So that's one of the things that people do get confused about. The next thing they get confused about is a partisan or nonpartisan race. Supervisor of elections is a partisan race. School board is not a partisan race. You do not run under the banner of any political party if you're running for school board. And in doing so, you cannot advertise on your signs that I'm Bob Sweat and I'm running for the school board District 3 and I'm a Republican. You can't do that. You've got to put down on your sign NPA or nonpartisan, because that's what that is. The county commissioners on the flip side of that coin, that's a partisan race, and when they run, they've got to put down there Bob Sweat running for county commission District 3, Republican or Democrat on their sign. So that's important, but it's all here in the rules. I can give you one of these packets, and you can get all of this information that I'm telling you right now. So I'm telling you the information now so that it piques your interest, and when you're going through this book, you're saying, oh, I remember him saying that. This is important. We need to make sure that we do this, okay? Petitions is another method of qualifying other than paying the qualifying fee. The petitions for a county-wide office is like 2,028. Oh, piece of cake, right? It's not hard to get that many petitions. Well, wait until you start trying to get them. That is a chore. This year it's a little bit better than most because of reapportionment. You can get a petition signed anywhere in Manatee County, say for instance a county commissioner living in District 3 or whatever, they can go anywhere in Manatee County and get their petition signed. Now me and the other constitutional officers, they can get it signed anywhere anyway. But the nice part about it this year is we can get a Democrat or a Republican to sign our petitions because it's a reapportionment year. Normally we cannot do that. Only the party in which you belong to can sign those petitions. So that's important to keep in mind for this year, because it gives you a little latitude and it's a little bit easier to get the petition signed. For me to get petitions this year, I need 2,028. Now that will vary depending upon, and for the school board it's the same thing because they run at large. At large means they run countywide, okay? Now, for a county commissioner, that lives in a single-member district, they only have to get petitions of 1% of the total number of registered voters at the last election in their district. Okay, so it's a lot of difference for them to get 420 and me to go out and get 2,028 petitions to get on the ballot. But that's another method for getting on the ballot. I need to mention this to you if you're running or not running, because if you're interested in the political process and you're out here trying to help a candidate, this is really, really important. The law changed last year, and I know there's been a lot of controversy over this. However, I need to cover it with you. If you like it, fine. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. The legislature did it, but it's here with us. Used to, people would come in the office, they'd pick up 15 voter registration applications, and they'd go out and they'd get them signed, and they'd bring them back in the office. Well, you can't do that anymore. If you're going to take voter registration applications and go out, you have to fill out a report with the state so that they know who you are and what you're doing. And then if you do that and you go through that process and then you get applications and take them out, they have got to be back in our office in a limited amount of time. We've had in the past people would fill them out and we'd get them a month after the books closed, and then people would be really upset. So if you're going to do that, you need to come by the office and let us give you all the information on how to fill out the paperwork for the state, get it up to the state, and get it back here so that you'll be legal. That's what I'm here for today, is hopefully to try to keep everybody on the right track and legal as far as running for office goes. It's interesting, too, because of some of the shifts and changes this year with early voting, with the primaries, that the election dates have changed just a little bit from the time frame that they used to be. This year, qualifying for our local candidates and some of our multi-candidates is June 4th at noon until June 8th at noon. That's the window that you have to bring all of your paperwork into our office and get it in and get it signed in, and then you're officially qualified. Now, you can announce that you're running, you can do all the paperwork there, open up a campaign account, collect money, spend money, and we will have you on our website that your intention is there to run. But for you to be able to qualify to run, that's the window that you have to be able to come into our office or get the information into the state, the Department of State in Tallahassee, during those days for you to be able to be sure that you're qualified and that your name gets on the ballot. This is a big book, and it takes much longer than 10 minutes to just flip through it. It's about a 2 or 3 hour process if you read it, and if you digest anything that's in it, it's about a 2 or 3 week process that you have to go through. If you're thinking about running for office, though, one of the things that you need to know, you have to fill out a form saying that you have read and understand Chapter 106 of the Florida statutes. You don't have to dig them up. I'll give them to you when you come in and pick up your paperwork. But you have to sign an affidavit saying that you have done that and that you know the rules and the regulations, so that you can't come back later and say, oh, you've just put a $1,000 fine on me and I didn't know about that. Well, ignorance is no excuse for making a mistake in this, because the book is there, the guideline is there for you to read, and you have to sign the documentation saying that you have read it and that you understand it. I can't tell you how many people get mad with me when I don't fine you, but when Tallahassee fines you $100 or $200 or $500 or $1,000 for something, I'm the guy that gets all the guff from it. So know the rules. That's all I'm trying to tell you today, is know the rules. Okay? Now, 6% for the constitutional officers and the county commissioners, if you decide that you're going to pay your qualifying fee and you don't want to get the petitions, and either way you want to do it is fine with me. Either way, my concern is to get your name on the ballot, and these are the ways that you have to go about getting it. 6% of the salary as of July 1st, 2011, for those of us that want to pay property appraiser, tax collector, the county commissioners. An example of that is the sheriff. If he got his petitions, but if he didn't get his petitions, he would have to pay $8,401.56. So now you see those numbers there, and you know why everybody would like to get the petitions, because they don't have to pay. If they get the petitions, they don't have to pay that qualifying fee. Okay. And the petitions, if you're going to get them, the petitions have to be in by June the 8th at 5 o'clock that day for you to be able to get your name on the ballot. Okay? Let me just touch base on a couple more things, and my time is probably drawing near to be over with. But I just want to show you so that when you come in the office and you're talking about stuff, the appointment of campaign treasurer is going to look like this. It's going to be yellow, so you'll know that I'm going to see if you come in the office that you got all this, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Statement of candidate has to be filled out, and then you have to get the paperwork done so that you can go to the bank. And when you go to the bank, I might suggest, and I don't want to steal any of April's thunder here. If you go to the bank to open up a campaign account, go to your bank. They're so much easier and agreeable than to go to a bank that's a total stranger. And if you make interest off of that campaign account that you have at the bank, you have to list that. You have to list that on your campaign report as the money that you have received. So be sure. One of the mistakes that I have come before us is that somebody will come in and I don't see anything on their report that says they made any interest. And so when I say to them, you didn't make any interest off your money. Oh yeah, but that wasn't a contribution. Well, it is under the law. So you need to file that. You need to file that on there. You cannot collect any signatures or any money. I'll say this again because it happens over and over and over again. You cannot collect any money or signatures until you have opened up your depository for a campaign account and appointed campaign treasurer. That is just a no-no. I need to talk to you just a little bit because this is something that doesn't fall under my auspices, but I get all the crap, if you'll excuse the expression. I get all the guff for this too, and that's campaign signs. Somebody has already opened up a campaign account and they put their signs out. Well, they can't do that yet. There is a rule as to when you can put your signs out. So, sign for yards or on a corner, said vote for Bob Sweat, supervisor for election. There's a certain time that you can do that, and in your packet, I have the sign ordinance from the county and from all of the municipalities so that you can read that and know how big your sign can be, where you can put them. You can't put them on a right-of-way. And people call me up and they'll say, over the weekend, I had 33 signs missing. Well, my first question to them is, where were they? Well, I had them on 41, I had them on 64. Where did you have them? Between the sidewalk and the road? Or did you have them on the property? Oh no, right along the road. Well, tough bounce. Your sign's gone. You can go out to the dump and look for them, because when the Department of Transportation picks those things up, that's where they go. So and they'll pick them up. I promise you, they will pick them up. And those signs are not cheap. If you can get a real nice, attractive sign for $4 or $5, you're lucky. And so if you're talking about putting 2,000 or 3,000 signs out, that's a bunch of money. So be careful when you're doing that. One of the things on your petitions too is if you get a petition signed, it's got to be by a registered voter. You can't just go out here and get anybody at the flea market walking by from Michigan to sign one of your petitions. Because if they do, if they're not in my database, when we get ready to check the petitions, we're going to reject them and put them in a stack and give them back to you, because they're no good if you do that, okay? I've gone over this pretty quick, but I think my time is pretty much up here. I'll be here when you get through if you have any questions. But let me encourage you, if you're not interested in running for office, don't pick one of these up for funds, because it's expensive to put them together. It's your tax dollars that we're using to do it. But if you are interested in running for an office, come by the office, pick one of these things up, and read it. Please don't come down to the office and say to me, your job looks pretty interesting. Could you sit down for a couple hours and tell me all about it? Well, I'm not going to do that. My time is too valuable for me to sit down and kibitz with somebody for a couple hours that don't even know where the elections office is. They have to call us 2 or 3 times when they get lost to get down there. What I'm saying to you, if you want to run, be serious about it and come down, and I'll do anything in the world I can, not for my office, but for all of the offices, to make sure that you're on the right path and that you're doing things right. You can pick one of these up. We have them in the office. It's a red folder just like I got in my hand. You can see about how thick it is. And so it's going to take some time for you to come down and go over it. Then if you have some questions, the one thing that I get when somebody comes in the office, not just from my office, but for a lot of these offices, they'll say, "I'm thinking about running for office. It pays pretty good." Well, if that's why you're running, forget it. You know, but if you got the fire in your belly to do a good job for the voters of Manatee County, by all means, get serious and think about it and run for office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me today. I'm April Schiff, and I am the co-founder and president of a campaign consulting firm based in Tampa, Florida, called Strategic Solutions. And we have spent the last 15 years working with candidates to help them get elected. And we do that all over the state of Florida. We've worked with city council candidates, county commissioners, judges, constitutional officers, all the way up to U.S. senators, governors, and state representatives, and from all levels. So every campaign is different. Every single campaign is different, and every candidate is different. A lot of times we work with people several years in advance of them running for office to help them prepare to run for office, because they know that they want to serve, but they don't know what they need to do to get ready. And so we will work with them in encouraging them to do a lot of public good work, to go out and to serve on boards, to do community service, to build basically a resume and to get to know the people that are going to be voting for them so that they can take that and propel it into a successful campaign. I have worked with many different levels of candidates in many different counties across the state of Florida, and I can tell you that you're very fortunate here to have a supervisor of elections like Bob Sweat, because some of them aren't as helpful as others. And so a lot of times people need to have campaign professionals to help them through all these steps that Bob was talking about, because they are complicated. They have serious risks. If you don't follow the laws and the rules, you will suffer the consequences, whether they are fines or not getting on the ballot. And people have missed it for a penny. They've missed it because they took their petitions in at the last minute and all their petitions didn't verify, so they didn't make it. And they're working very hard and trying very hard to get onto the ballot. They're just not being as thorough and as attentive to all the details as they need to be. And it's a complicated process. If you want to be a county commissioner, or I frequently have people come into my office, probably more so than anything, people come into my office and say, "I want to go to Washington, I'm going to be a congressman." Really? That's a big job. And why do you want to do that? I want to do it because I'm mad about this and I'm mad about that and I don't like what Congress has done and I'm going to go change the world. That's great that you have that kind of a passion, but you got to get elected. And once you get elected to any office, whatever the office is, I ask my people, look at the job you're going to have to do, because when you get elected, you're going to serve for 4 years or 6 years or whatever that term is in that job, and you're going to get up every morning and go to work. We want you to like it, because getting elected is only the first step. Then you have to do the job and suffer through the public scrutiny and all of that type of thing of being a public office holder and making the right decisions and doing the right things. Most candidates, they know they want to be whatever it is they want to be, but they have no idea how to get through the process and how to get elected. And that's where they typically will come to us and say, what do we do? And we help them step by step all the way through. We create a plan and a strategy. And there are a lot of campaign consultants out here, and a lot of people who call themselves campaign consultants who probably shouldn't be consultants. I encourage people to check very carefully the people that you're working with, the professionals that you're hiring for your campaign. Make sure that they have done what they're telling you they've done. Look at their success records, look at the people they've represented in the past, and go talk to them. Go talk to their candidates and see, you know, how they felt about it, whether they felt that it was worth it, whether they did a good job for them. And that's very important. The other important thing is that you feel very comfortable with the people that are working on your campaign. Because whether it's paid staff being consultants and maybe CPAs or whatever you're using, you may have a need for, or whether it's volunteers, you have to be comfortable with those people, because one person on your campaign staff doing something that they shouldn't be doing comes back to reflect on the candidate. No matter what happens in a campaign, it's the candidate's responsibility, it's the candidate's name who's on the line, and it's the candidate who has to face the consequences. It doesn't matter who did the deed. We start with a very comprehensive campaign plan, and that's my book here is our campaign plan, and I will put this out. This is a sample, and it's a working document. We work through this book throughout the entire campaign. We craft these for each campaign. They're different for every candidate and for every race. They have a ton of information in them. I think over the years, I've been doing this for about 15 years. I can't tell you how many candidates I've worked with. Only 2 have admitted to reading the entire book. They should have read it, but they didn't, because there's a lot of really, really good information in here. And a lot of the information that's in here is also, I have all the information that the supervisor for the elections have, because it's so important. You cannot avoid it. Another way you can get that information, though, if you're just preliminarily checking things out, is to go online, because most of the supervisors and the Division of Elections in Tallahassee have a lot of that information online, so you can find that information. I think that 2 of the probably most challenging issues in running any campaign is fundraising and cultivating volunteers. They're also 2 of the most important things you can have in a campaign. You can't win without money, and you can't win without a volunteer corps, because you can't do it all yourself. Fundraising is extremely difficult. It takes a lot of money to run a campaign, depending on the size of the race. We base the size of the race on the number of voters that are in your district, because those are the people, those are your target, the people that you have to touch and convince to vote for you. Convincing people to vote for you is not always easy. We go through a process where we work with our candidates to make sure that they have a serious knowledge of all the issues that are going to be involved, because there's different issues if you're running for Congress or if you're running for City Council. It's a whole different world. But you need to know the issues, and you need to know them well. We also work with them on developing their message. If you're going to run for county commission, why? What is it you want to do? Why do you want to run for office? And that is probably a key important question. Why do you want to run for office? People ask it all the time. So if you're motivated, like Bob mentioned, because of the salary, you're not going to go very far. But if you're motivated because you want to make a change, you want to do good for your community, you want to give back to your community, there's certain things that you're passionate about, whether it's the new roads that they're going to put in or what's happening in the school systems, whatever your motivation is, you need to solidify that so you can tell people that in a compelling manner so that they can say, ooh, that's good. I like what you're saying. I like your cause, and I'm going to get behind you and I'm going to help you. Because you need people to help you go knocking on doors and standing on street corners and making phone calls. I think that money is important because you have to use mail, you have to have signs, you have to get your name ID. People need to know who you are and what you're doing, and that costs money. But most campaigns can be won on the ground, and when I say on the ground, I prefer grassroots. Grassroots is the most effective way to get your message out and to convince people to vote for you. The more hands you shake, the more votes you're going to get. The more doors you knock on, the more votes you're going to get. And you have to do it in a planned and concise manner. What we do with most of our races is when we create our plan, we start on election day and we work our way backwards. And we put together a plan that creates a great deal of layering so that right before election day, it's going to be the highest, most intense work of the campaign, between things like making sure that your billboards are up, your signs are out, your radio commercials are going. If you have TV, your TV commercials are going. You've already knocked on as many doors as you possibly can, and you have a whole bunch of volunteers that you've pulled in, and they're making phone calls to voters every day. And the crescendo is at the end of the day, when we get to election day, that your get out the vote effort is stronger than anybody else's, because you can have a whole lot of people saying, yep, I support you, I support you, I support you. If they don't go to the polls and vote for you, you won't win. And motivating your voters to the polls is the solid, most important thing you can do in a campaign. We've become challenged in that recently because it's no longer just election day. It's election weeks because of early voting. which the legislature has played with. At first we had 14 days of early voting, and I think we're now down to 7 days of early voting, and who knows, they may change it during this session. It could be another group of early voting days. But between absentee ballots, early voting, and election day, the challenge is huge. But it's also an advantage because you can, if you work it right, you can know that your votes are already in before election day. If you're chasing absentee ballots, people request a ballot by mail, and when they do that, the campaign has the ability to get a list of everybody that gets an absentee ballot mailed to them on a daily basis. If you're running your campaign correctly, you're chasing those ballots in that you are contacting every voter that gets an absentee ballot before they fill it out and send it back, hopefully getting them to vote for you. And you do it in a very methodical system because it's a huge amount of work to contact all the voters and to know which voters might be more compelled to vote for you versus someone else, which is your targeting, which is in a partisan race where you say, well, yeah, all the Republicans are going to vote for the Republican and the Democrats are going to vote for the Democrat, makes it a little easier. In nonpartisan races, it's a little more challenging. And a lot of times I've found that voters are frustrated by nonpartisan races because most voters identify their candidates by their political affiliation. They know that if they're a Republican, they stand for certain things and Democrats stand for other things. So in the nonpartisan races, it's very challenging, I think, for voters to determine who it is they want to support. So you have to tell them. You have to tell them what you think and what your message is. I think that there are a whole lot of new influences in campaigns. Third-party groups such as PACs, and you hear about these committees, these super committees that are out there. Candidates are limited to raising money at a $500 increment, but PACs, which are political action committees, ECOs, which are like electioneering communication organizations, the state of Florida, the legislature has seen fit to create these entities that are established for no other reason but to influence voters. And they're all online, most of them. There are some exceptions that are only filed under the IRS and not under the Division of Elections. But you can search out the information and try and find out who's funding these PACs and these committees because they're going to be sending you mail, they're going to be calling you, and they're going to be knocking on your door, also trying to influence your vote. Those committees can receive money in any denomination. Hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of dollars are just put into those committees on a regular basis, and they're spent to influence votes and sometimes in support of specific candidates. If you watch the presidential candidates right now, the Republican primary presidential candidates, nearly every one of them, and I would say probably every one of them, has a corresponding super PAC that is raising money hand over fist and spending it on their campaigns because they can put huge amounts of money in there that they can't put into their campaign accounts. Federal campaigns, you can put a lot more than the $500. You can put $2,500 each into a campaign, a federal campaign, but the PACs can put hundreds of thousands of dollars into them. So it's, you just, as a voter, I think you have to watch where the information is coming from, and as a candidate, you have to watch because on the state level, these committees are outspending the campaign accounts to influence voters and to get people elected. And we'll see more and more of that as we move forward unless something's done with the campaign finance laws to change it. I think that campaigns are grueling. They are taxing. I've talked a lot of people out of running for office because if you are not committed and you don't have the fire in your belly and you're not driven, the process of the campaign is so grueling that you will not succeed. It takes its toll on your business, your job, your family, your bank account, and your energy level, because at the end it's 24/7, 7 days a week. It doesn't stop between the events and knocking on doors and answering letters and phone calls. It's just so much work to do. So I encourage anybody who wants to run for office to be really, really, really certain that that's what they want to do, because it's a huge job just getting elected. But I think that's about my time frame, and I'll be happy to answer questions. I'll also be here afterwards if you want to talk about anything else. Thank you very much.
So I want to thank you for inviting me, and I've written down a little bit of my journey because a lot of people have wondered how I got where I am today and the process and the work that it took. So I've jotted down a few notes just to give you an idea where I've come from and how I got and how it was during my elections. And when I came into Manatee County, how I always say I hit the big boy club. It wasn't an easy job. But for those of you that don't know me, I've been a nurse since 1977, and I worked at Manatee Hospital from 77 to 91. And when I got my first taste of politics when Manatee Hospital was being sold. I happened to be a nurse in a white cap in the audience the day they were sold, and that's where I first had my first contact with somebody that I admire to this day, and that was Pat Glass. She was there and she voted to sell the hospital. So I had always followed politics since there. But then my friend in the early 90s, some of you may have heard of the Beach Boys coming to Anna Maria Island. And I was all excited and I said, sure, I'll help you. And I went to the Home Speech Commission meeting. And I looked up there and I knew everybody up there, and I'd known since I'd grown up. I've lived on the island for 42 years. And so then I started, after work, decided to go to the meetings just to listen. Well, then I got there and I didn't like what the decisions they were making. So I decided that maybe I would try to run. So I was a 35-year-old single mom, and I ran. Well, I lost. And 3 months later, one of the commissioners that we actually were in a race against decided she wanted to move off the island. And so I rushed down to City Hall with the other gentleman that was there with me, and we decided, and it was up to the commission to appoint somebody for her term. So this gentleman that was with me was very good friends with Miss Duffy that owned Duffy's Tavern, and at that time she was the mayor of Holmes Beach. So somebody nominated him, but thank God nobody seconded it. And I was nominated, and I was put in that office that very minute. So from 91 till 98, I served as a Holmes Beach commissioner. From 98 to 2006, I wanted to learn more, I wanted to do more, and I ran for mayor, and I won. And I was mayor of Holmes Beach. And I enjoyed an election every 2 years, and I thought I did a great job. My election results were 71% of the population. But it was a nonpartisan race. I couldn't have even told you who was a Republican or a Democrat at the dais, because in the cities, it isn't partisan on the islands. But I did continue to work full-time as a mayor because as the mayor you make $700 a month. So I still continue to work as a mayor, and I go every morning at the City Hall at 7 a.m. And I finally convinced the commission that if you want young people to run, you really need to have the meetings at night so that somebody can run for office and also that can attend the meetings. And so to this day, the meetings still are at night. As many of you guys know, my good friend Pat Glass decided not to run in 2006. And I was ready to make a move to the county and learn more, because after 16 years of politics on the island, I need to expand my knowledge base. And I've always done this. I was the longest serving person at the dais at the time, and I was ready. I spoke to many people, as our strategist here said, and I knew it was going to be hard, but I had no idea how hard it was going to be. I wasn't known in East County, I wasn't known in South County, and I wasn't known in North County. I was known in West and on the islands. But then all of a sudden my good friend Ed Chance decided to run. And I thought, well, I didn't have a chance. So I thought, well, I'll wait and my time will come. And as you all know, Eddie Chance died. The day he died, I was working at my husband's office, and I received a call, and I asked if I was still willing to run. And I had to make this decision within 3 hours. I was devastated that my friend died, and I just sat in the break room to figure out what to say or if I really wanted to do this. So I called my husband, who happened to be operating at the time in surgery. He's a surgeon. And he took the call, and I says, what do I do? I told him what happened to Eddie, and I said, I have to make a decision with 3 hours, and you're in surgery. What do you think? Because this is a big commitment. He said, do you still want to do it, and do you still have the fire in your belly? And I said, yeah. He goes, then go for it. So I made the call, and as I always say, the rest is history. Running for the county commission was fun, and then there were some things that really disappointed me. I've been very successful on the island. I'm a positive person. I've always run good, clean campaigns, and I believe that people vote on you on your character and not nasty campaigns. I just feel that way. So I jumped into the race, and 3 other people jumped in also. It was 8 weeks before the election, and none of us had any money, and none of us had entered the race until Eddie died. So I called Pat Glass to get advice on how to manage a campaign. As a mayor, the most I ever raised for a campaign was $4,000. I did it myself. I only had to have 15 signatures to get on the ballot. And I thought, what am I going to do? And Bob has swore me in probably almost every one of those times. So she told me what to do, that I had to get a strategist. I needed help, because it wasn't just going to be, I've been an elected official, here I am. I had to have a platform. I had to convince the public that I was the best one. The first thing the strategist asked me if I had any skeletons in my closet. Well, I said, I'm not going to lie, but I don't think I do. So, then they went through a whole series of stuff. They asked me if I was pro-life or pro-choice. Nobody had ever asked me that on the islands because it was nonpartisan. Nobody cared. I never voted on anything for it. And the platform that I ran on during the primary, I had flyers put all over against me. I had all this stuff that I just could not believe happened to me. But as our strategist said here, you have to have fire in your belly and you have to be able to handle it, or you just don't belong in this job. I was again asked to meet somebody in Lakewood Ranch. This person told me that he was going to run and he would beat me. But if I decided to run and he decided not to, I needed to put him on the planning commission. And I went, whoa. So I sat there with my strategist, sitting there, took a couple deep breaths, and I said, oh my God, nobody's ever done this before. So I took a look at him and I said, listen, I said, I've been in politics for 16 years and I've never been in anybody's back pocket, and I'm not going to start now. Of course, after that, I thought I was going to have a stroke, so I remained calm. Then he got all flustered, didn't really know what to say. And he said, oh, well, I didn't really mean it like that. So I left feeling that was the disappointment part of the running. But I left feeling, you know what? I'm going to win now. I'm going to win, and I'm going to win with class, and I'm going to win with character. So needless to say, that person didn't jump in, and we started with the primary. When I won the primary, and I was probably, and I say this, and I'm a moderate Republican. I'm not a liberal, and I'm not a conservative. So I really don't have place, I feel sometimes I don't have a place to fit in my party. But I beat 3 very conservative Republicans, and I did a good job because I feel my job is to represent everybody once I'm in office. And the only person that actually called me the day after the election was Dr. Triguero. And he had enough class to call me, and he also called all his supporters, and he got permissions for me to put signs in their areas. And I'll never forget that to this day. The people that funded Ed Chance's election, when he died, they called me because they'd heard that I was going to do it. And I raised, and it's probably the most that was ever raised, Ed. I think it was $232,000 in 8 weeks. I had all these people sending me money or talking to me, say, we didn't support you at all, and we don't, but Eddie Chance died, and you're the best out of the 4. So that's, I'm telling you what the real world's like. So some of you that are out there thinking about county commission, get ready. The money upsets me because I have also, many of you know, lived by myself since I was 15, and I do a lot in the community for social service, and I felt that money like that could be used to feed the hungry, could be used to help the community, and I just can't believe how much it takes to run an election, but it really does. Now my second run, I just won my election last year. I was better prepared. I was threatened by some that they were going to run against me, but unfortunately, in order to run, you have to get your support early, like you heard it just a few minutes ago. I started working on my reelection a year and a half before, and what I did is I went around, and Bill and everybody can tell you, and talked to people and said, I'm going to run again. I hope I have your support. Because then if a candidate comes in the last minute, they don't have a chance, because you do need people, you need your citizens that can fund you to win. The second time, I only raised $83,000. And there were candidates in this election that raised over 100,000, but people thought that, you know, I'd done a good job and that I wouldn't need that much money. But the signs, like she's talking about, for the last weeks or two, I was driving all over this county putting signs myself. If I'd see somebody move them, I move them myself. You would not believe how many signs I can get in my little VW Beetle. I've known how to stack them, and I can get them all over, because I represented 760 square miles. But the rewards of all this is worth it. I feel my role as a commissioner is to help and try to make the community better. And I know everybody tells you that, but for those of you that know me, you know that this is really who I am. I pride myself that I'm in no one's pocket, and I make a policy not to meet with developers or anybody that it may be a quasi-judicial meeting, because I want to hear everything that comes before us at the dais or with the backup given to me. And I've gotten grief over that. I've made comments, well, I really wasn't sure how I was going to vote until just now, because all the evidence was brought before me. But I feel like it's everybody's do a fair process. I go as far as to say, and there are some people actually that are in this audience that are actually related to my son-in-law. My son-in-law represented the racetrack over that was going to be in Whitfield, and I didn't know it. He came in, and I said, what are you here for? And he told me, and I went, oh, well, I voted against it. You don't know how that was at home, you know. But it wasn't the right thing to do, and he's told everybody, Carol's going to do what's the right thing, what she thinks is the right thing. I have been able to do some things that I'm very proud of, as being in the healthcare field for many years. I opened up the Indigent Care Fund so that all hospitals and all doctors can get paid for taking care of the indigent that qualify in all 3 hospitals. That hadn't happened since the 80s. If my husband went to Lakewood Ranch or to Blake, which he goes there, and it was an indigent patient, he couldn't get paid, or the hospital couldn't get paid, only at Manatee Hospital, and it wasn't right. I work once a month at Manatee County at the Homeless Coalition. With my husband, I convinced him to do that, and we do surgery on the homeless, just so I can keep my hands in and to really, really see where the real world is and see what's going on, so that when I'm at the dais, I can talk the talk. I worked real close with our county's insurance plans, and I decreased some unnecessary costs, probably about $200,000 the first year, that I recognized that it was a waste of money and the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for it. I haven't raised taxes since I've been elected in office, and I hadn't raised taxes since '98 when I was mayor. But it's not that I wouldn't. I always felt like there was a lot of money in the county, and we didn't need to raise them. But if we have to, I will make the big decisions. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be politically correct. But so far, we've been able to live within our budget. This year, we're going to have to lower it another $5 million. We are getting down to the pain. We've laid off 300 people so far since I've been in office, but we will do what it takes to balance our budget. I've worked, as many of you know, have read in the paper, the no-kill program for animals in Manatee County. It took me 4 years to get all the animal organizations in Manatee County. We are the first in the state of Florida and one of the very few in the country that have no-kill in Manatee County, so I think we should be proud of that, because everybody said it couldn't be done, and we did it, and thanks to the community for all that. I'm a hands-on worker, as you can tell, as an elected official. I'm not going to sit in my office. Richard's shaking his head, he knows. I'm not going to sit in my office and just wait for you to come to me and make that la-di-da decision to move on. If there's something that's going on, I'm going to go down to Animal Services. I've been in there during my summer break this year and entered microchip data because they were so far behind they needed help. I wasn't doing anything. I might as well help, so that's what I did. So my message is, if you're a hard worker, if you're willing to work hard and stand by your convictions, you'll do well as an elected official. There are things that do make me nervous, that red file every time it comes, because it's so hard. You have to follow the rules or you're out of there, and it's very, very complicated. I've had to hire a treasurer, because if everything isn't right, you're out of it. You're responsible, as me as a candidate, I'm responsible for my campaign. I don't care what all my volunteers do. If they mess up, it's my fault. And I have to take the heat for it, and it's my responsibility. Social media is a big thing. This last election, I started a Facebook page and a web page, and you would not believe the response I got. So that really, really is something new that hadn't been in a long time, but you have to get out there. You have to be willing to, you have to have it in you, and you've got to my way where I think I've been successful, I've been honest, and I'm not going to be in anybody's pocket, and I think that's what's made me successful. And I think I've done a good job. So anyway, that's the perspective coming from a candidate from the beginning to what it is today. And I welcome anybody that wants to join public service because it's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
You guys kept bringing up the topic of money and what's needed, and it's probably more for the consulting. And it sounds like the consulting is an invaluable resource that you mentioned that you even turned to one. And what are we looking at for especially like county commissioner positions, or maybe some, I mean, we're not talking about state reps or governors or anything else like that, but we're talking some of these local positions that might only have, you know, $100,000 to run an entire campaign, which is a lot of money still, but what are we looking at for to retain your services and to retain your services, I guess? Well, not what you charge, but what, I mean, what, you know, the whole, is that 10%? Is that based on salary of the actual position?
It varies greatly, and it depends on the race, because there's you know, city council races and county commission races. They're not looking at nearly as much money as some of the state races are, the legislature, the Senate, and even the statewide races. So it all depends. One of my good friends, who's an excellent consultant, likes to say that this thing did not come with a price list, okay? And it didn't. I work off of two things. I charge a base fee for my services, which is a flat fee, and it depends on the race. It could be anywhere from $2,500, $5,000 to $50,000 or $100,000. It just depends on what the race is. If it's statewide, if it's, you know, local, that varies greatly. It also depends on my personal feeling. I'm one of those people that does this. The reason I do it is, number one, I love it. And number two, I feel like I can make a difference by helping get good quality people elected to office. So I just kind of just do it, depending on what, you know, how I feel about it. The other thing that a lot of consultants do, and I do as well, is I work off of a commission. And my commission is charged on everything that we help you purchase, other than postage. I refuse to charge a commission on postage. But when Bob told you you can get signs for $4 or $5 a piece, I can get signs for $1.50 or $2, and I can charge you a commission on top of it, and you're still paying less than you would if you went out and bought them yourself, because I represent so many campaigns and I have vendors that I've worked with for so many years. I negotiate my prices in advance because they know I'm going to come back next year and buy 15,000 signs. So I can get a better deal on a lot of that.
Since I'm pretty familiar with it, you know, I would pay a certain amount a month to my strategist, but my strategist only did that. So I had to rely on my friends and my committee to help me with everything else. And then at times I would help, but I would have to pay. I'd pay people that knew like how to organize fundraisers or signs, stuff like that. But yeah, it all depends. And to run, like you're saying, for county commission, probably for at large and no name recognition and all that, probably over 100,000. And for district, it can go anywhere from 40 to 80 to 90. And that's about what runs.
My name is Jo Williams, and I realize that the cost of everything goes up every year. But I'm wondering, is there anything, any of you have any ideas about what can be done to keep the price of campaigning from being what it is and from going up every year? Do you have any ideas?
Probably the quick answer to what you're asking is no. But let me just, this has been a something that's stuck in my craw for years and years. If the legislature, and of course they're the ones that make the rules and they're the ones that are affected by the rules as much as we are, if we could get the legislature to say that you could not collect any more money in your campaign than 5% of what your salary is for the number of years that you're in office, it would cut down an awful lot of what you have to collect to go out here and run. That we don't have grassroots anymore because of the media that we have today, the TV, and it's really a burden. And I personally feel like if you're in office, it doesn't matter to you. But if you're wanting to run for office, I personally feel like that it keeps a lot of good qualified people from seeking office because of the money that they have to raise to run. And I think if we got onto our legislatures and said, look, 5% of the salary times the number of years that you serve, and that's all the money that you can collect. And they put a cap on it then, and then everybody is on equal footing and they have the same opportunities as anybody else. And that would apply because each office is different. Some are for 2 years, some are for 4 years. But if you had that set up that way, I've talked to the legislature about this for several years, and I get nowhere, and I doubt if we ever will. But it's certainly a logical solution to what we have to pay. That cuts into your.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's okay. I have a strong opinion about that as well. And does it cut into how much money I might be able to make? Maybe, maybe not. The problem is simply campaign finance laws. The campaign finance laws need to be totally revamped. If they have to get rid of the PACs, the CCEs, the ECOs, because nobody out here who decides they want to run for office today, if you want to run for the State House, good luck, because that PAC and that ECO and those people are going to raise so much money that you can't compete against it. It's just not possible. And grassroots can't get you anywhere when you're just being bombarded with everything money can buy in a campaign. So I think that the crux of it all is the campaign finance laws. And personally, I think they all need to be totally revamped. It won't happen because the legislature is the one that fixes the campaign finance laws and sets them, and those are also the people that are benefiting from the structure that's in place today. So I don't see it changing, but that's the way you have to change it.
Mention just one other thing, if I may, and I mean, I'm on my way out, but it still really kind of gravels me a little bit when we have all these special PACs and everything, and I got some in the mail yesterday. From who? Interested parties to whatever. You get all these fancy, glitchy things, and they'll say, oh, well, I believe this person is pro-life. I believe that, or this person is, or they're not. They have all of these negative campaigns out there against, really, I think, probably some good people. But they can advertise anything they want, and they can say anything they want to say about you, from having a hangnail to dyeing your hair. I mean, it doesn't matter. They can do this. They got the money, and there's no regulations on how they spend it, and that has got to stop someplace. If we don't, we're not going to have a system anymore. Off my soapbox now.
Mr. Sweat, hold on for one more minute. I apologize if I'm redundant here because I got here a little bit late, but I did want to ask, in the county, how much of the voting is done on electronic voting machines?
Everything. Everything. If you go to the polls, you are voting on an electronic voting machine. If you go to early voting, you are voting on an electronic voting machine. If you vote by mail, obviously you've got a pencil at home or whatever, and you're filling in the oval, putting it back in the envelope and sending it back. But then again, electronically, that vote that you vote absentee is counted on an electronic voting machine.
And is there any paper trail?
Yes, ma'am. We have, and 13 years ago, you might remember when I took all the flack of going to a paper ballot, and everybody said, you know, it was hellfire and brimstone and the world was going to stop tomorrow. Well, I will tell you, I believed it then, and I believe it today. That is the best system that has ever been built, because you can track that ballot. That you can track it from the time that I mail it to you at home to vote absentee until it comes back into my office, and then those ballots are stored in a secure area for 24 months after the election is over. And if there's a question, anything about that ballot, if you challenge that, those ballots are right there. I have had 7 recounts since I bought this system. Never one time have I had a difference in the count that came in on the machines as to what we counted by hand. It will show you, and it's open to the public. You can come down this year or any time when we're doing this, and we do an audit of every election that's done here in Manatee, across the state, but here in Manatee County. Those ballots actually come out of the security folder that they're locked into. We open them up with a team of counters with a canvassing board there to oversee that, and the public there to oversee it. And those ballots are stacked on the table, and if there's any questions on those, it's brought before the canvassing board, and the public can look at them and see what's going on with it. But I will tell you again, never have I been one ballot off. 200,000, 250,000, 180,000 ballots counted, and when we counted them again, I've never been one ballot off when we did it again. The paper trail system is the best thing that ever happened to the voting process. Thank you.
The paper ballot is the golden standard that we should have everywhere, because with all of the money and all of the time and all of the work, and now with SCOTUS and their ludicrous ruling, it's going to get even worse. And the proof that's out there that these machines can be rigged to flip votes and flip elections. I was fortunate enough to have been present when, I think his name is Harry Hursti from Finland, came over to do a demonstration of how easily the machines can be rigged, you know, to flip a vote or to flip a ballot, or even at the central computer can be pre-programmed, kind of a thing. And although we think that technology is a wonderful thing, in this case, I think we very, very, very wary, and we should always have a backup system. And I am pleased and thrilled that you feel the same way. And I'm sorry to hear that you're leaving, because I'm afraid the next guy might not.
Let me, if I may, let me just address rigging these voting machines, okay? If a supervisor of elections anywhere in the world, here in the state of Florida or Manatee County, is worth their salt, no one can rig one of those machines. I personally, with 2 other people on a canvassing board, I program those machines to tabulate the ballots as they are previously, sampled, marked, okay? I program those. I lock them in a room about this big with 4 security alarm systems in it. That's how paranoid I am about stuff like that. But anyway, you can't get to them. So if you can't get to them, you can't rig them. I pick them up. I personally take them to the polls. I pick them up from the polls and bring them into the office. You cannot touch one of those machines and do anything to it. Once I have them programmed, and this is the important part, once I have them programmed, I take this program and I overnight it to the Division of Elections in Tallahassee with the entire program on it. So if I decide in the middle of the night that I think I don't like that candidate, so I'm going to change that, okay? The program has already been sent to Tallahassee, so nobody can come in there and do anything with it anyway. So it's a fail-safe system that's backed up with a program, and everybody should have to do that, is a backup program someplace with some authority to take care of that. And we have that here in the state of Florida.
And somebody has to come in and do something. They have access to the memory cards at that point?
If I have a glitch, and I have, believe me, I've never hidden anything from the voters in Manatee County. I have precincts out here that the machine, for some reason or other, will not accept a ballot, or there's a glitch in that. They call me the minute that happens, and that machine locks itself down. I go out there, or my assistant goes out there with a brand new memory card if we need it, or we open up that machine, and if it's another mechanism like a read head in the then we unlock that memory card, we put a seal on that, we record that, and then we bring that back and we replace that memory card right there so that we keep total control of those. And then I keep those memory cards for 24 months also before I erase what's on there until the time has expired for anybody to challenge that election. But you make a very, very valid point, because a lot of people think we just throw them out there, and if anything goes bad, they just flip them over in the side. I have people call me all the time saying, do you actually count the absentee ballots? Well, you know, that comes from out in California and Michigan and 2 Maryland states that said, well, we've got the absentee ballots here, but we only have 20,000 absentee ballots, and the candidate won by 23,000, so there's no reason to count those. Well, that's not true. There is a reason, because a person filled that oval in, and they voted with the intent of their vote counted, and we do that. But there's some states that don't, but people read that in the paper, and then they call me up and they say, well, I read in the paper you don't count your absentee ballots. Well, we do. It's just a lot of misinformation that goes along with. But I can assure you, I can't speak for every office. I only run one, and that's this one right here in Manatee County. But we have the security built in to this, and it took me 3 years to find the system that we're using right now. I went everywhere looking for a ballot with a paper, machine with a paper trail on there, and until I bought this. And the only thing that anybody's ever had any problems with was with our disability voting equipment, because there's no paper trail there directly. But indirectly, what people don't understand is that the machine that we have for our disability voting community, I can go back in there, and if there's a question or we have a challenge on that, I can actually go back in there and reproduce a ballot just like they voted on election day. I don't know who voted the ballot, but I can go back in there and look at that. It's not a big ballot. It's just a little ballot that comes out on a tape, but we can reproduce the ballot. So everything in Manatee County is paper. It's on paper.
My question is that apparently there's other counties in the state of Florida that have had fraud issues or issues with voting, and to the degree where apparently the state legislators have thought fit to change a lot of the voting regulations this year. And I don't know if it's been finalized or not, but my understanding is that the League of Women Voters has been campaigning for voter registration for over, I read 90 years. And yet this year they have decided not to do so. And I wondered if I could hear from not only you, but also from the League of Women Voters of why they had made that decision. Thank you.
Let me tell you the reason why they did it. There's not a lot of logic in the legislature doing it, but I will tell you why. In 2000, 2002, and 2004, we had groups, Acorn and other groups, that came in to the state of Florida and all across the country registering voters. I can personally tell you that sometimes I got those applications where they registered voters. I got them 45 days after the books closed, and some of those I got after the election. Some I never got. And the reason why I know I never got them, because I had more than one call, maybe a dozen calls saying, I registered to vote, you never sent me a card. Well, if I don't get that registration, I can't issue you a pass to vote because you're not registered. And if I don't get it before the books close, that means that you can be registered, but you can't vote in this election, because 29 days before the election, what we call books closing means that no one else can register to vote for that election. Many times that happened here in Manatee County where a person could not do that. The legislature, without giving it a great deal of thought, decided, okay, by gosh, we're going to stop that. You've got to be registered with the state if you want to go out and register voters. And you have a specific period of time that you can turn those in. That's not all bad, but they should have revamped it a little bit more and given the supervisor of elections the latitude to be able to handle this instead of the Tallahassee. Because now you have to fill out the paperwork and send it to Tallahassee, then they have to assign you a PIN number before you can come back to my office and pick up voter registration applications.
Excuse me, the League of Women Voters has been doing it for 90 years. Surely they're registered.
I can respond.
Yes, if you'd like to, because it's kind of a double-edged sword there too. So.
Yes, the league did decide not to do voter registration in Florida anymore because the new rules are too onerous. Now, there always was a deadline. Onerous, difficult to follow, too difficult. There was a deadline already of 10 days. You had to get the voter registrations in to the SOE office, and that was reasonable. But what they did was cut it down to 2 days, to 48 hours. So, and it just was not enough time because, yeah, you could plan to take them down to the SOE office tomorrow, but you get sick or your car breaks down, any number of things can happen. And the risk was too great. The penalties are very harsh. $50 per registration. So if you're handling 100 registrations, you could be looking at a very, very high fine. And also, when you register votes, you have to now register as a third-party group. And we don't really object to that as much, except they have all this very threatening language in the sign-up rule that is enough to scare anybody from definitely discouraging.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it has made voting more difficult to do than less difficult to do in the state of Florida. Therefore, we're probably going to have less voter participation versus more voter participation.
I don't know, because we just started this. But I think there's plenty of opportunities for people to register to vote if they want to register to vote. But here's one of the things that most of us do not understand. If you get these third-party groups that come in here, they take an application out, and they've got it all filled in, and they say, here, sign this. Well, you're signing something that you haven't read, but you're swearing that all of that information is true. I get it in my office, and I get felons. I get people that don't live in the county. It's an expense to us to do that. Are we hurting someone or keeping someone from registering to vote? I don't think so. I think that we have enough outlets here in Manatee County for people that want to register to vote that they can register to vote. I won't know until this session is over, but I don't think so. Because, see, I think a lot of the people that were registering to vote were, I don't want to say it, but I just think that they took advantage of a lot of people that did not know what was going on. Sign this. Yeah. It was all third-party groups that came in here and did, not the League, not the Republicans, not the Democrats. It was these third-party groups that were from out of town that had a sign stuck on the back of their car, register to vote here, on every street corner. Those same people, by the way, let me just point this out to you. These same people, by the way, for some way got a list of the absentee ballot voters, and they were calling them up and saying, if you have a problem voting your ballot, let me know and I'll come by and help you. We'll come by and pick up your ballot and take it to the elections office for you. These people are crooks. That's exactly what they are, and if it stopped them, so be it. I'm sorry that it hurt the League and it hurt the Republicans and the Democrats and other people here in Manatee County, but I don't think the effect is going to be that great, because if you wanted to register to vote, I'll bet you wouldn't have to catch somebody with a sign on their car sitting out here on the street corner of 14th and 3rd saying, come and register to vote. You go on my website and register to vote. You can pick it up at any bank in Manatee County. There's 142 different places that you can pick up a voter application. So, is it going to hurt? Maybe, but I don't think so. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, just very quickly, because I spend a lot of time looking at who votes and how often they vote and my targeting. And after every election, I go back and look at it, because I like to compare, did the people I try to bring out to go to vote, did they actually vote, and what can I do differently to bring them out to vote? So I spend a lot of time looking at who votes. And I think very seriously, and I've been through this new law change intensely, it was intended to eliminate fraud, because there was so much fraudulent activity going on. These people were coming in. I ran into groups of them. They were from New Jersey and all over the place. They were getting paid $1 a piece to register voters. They were making it up and turning it in and getting paid and leaving town. They didn't care.
Was that as recent as last year, or was that in 2004?
It was worse in 2004 than any other time. And these people infiltrated the polls. I've been a poll watcher. I've been inside the polls. I've watched what they do. I've watched how they tried to manipulate people to vote. Those election law changes were intended to eliminate that fraudulent activity. And the belief is, just as Bob said, that true citizens who really want to vote, they're going to vote. And there's a little skirmish going on about you have to have a voter ID or an ID card to vote. You have to have an ID card to drive a car. Why wouldn't you have to have one? The legitimate people have IDs. So it's not going to stop legitimate voters. It's going to stop the fraud is the intent of it.
We got to wrap up. We have to wrap up now. We have to wrap up. No more questions. I would just like to say that the league, there was no voter fraud. The proof that there's fraud going on, there was only like 31 cases in the last 3 elections or something like that. It's just a solution chasing a non-existent problem. But anyway, we do have to wrap up, and I'd like to thank our wonderful guests for sharing their information for us today.